I gotta be honest, I am bracing for how pissed off people are gonna be at this video, but I did say that I would discuss the topic and my opinions on it if folks were interested. So I got an awful lot of people on YouTube and here on TikTok who said, I'd definitely love to hear your thoughts on feral cats being culled. This was on a video where I was discussing the Department of Fish and Wildlife's plan to cull 460,000 plus barred owls over the next 30 years in areas of the United States where they are invasive and a threat to the northern spotted owl. People got big mad at that video, and I said that I was in support of that action. I thought that it was good. It was good conservation management, and that I recognized that that opinion would be somewhat controversial. And I said, well, you want to hear something real controversial? Ask me about my opinion about culling feral cats. So here we go. Let's do it. I'm ready. Okay. I don't have any problem with culling feral cats. I think that we should more actively cull feral cats in North, Central, and South America. Now, I mentioned in that other video about owls that my undergraduate degree is in biology, but my focus was on ornithology. I did one capstone on avian cognition, and I did another on songbird migration. So I'm very well aware of the fact that the top two pressures on songbirds in North, Central, and South America are habitat destruction and feral cats. And actually not just feral cats, but also cats that are owned by people but are allowed to be free outdoors. According to the USDA, there are between 30 and 60 million feral cats in the United States alone. I know that people don't like to think about domestic cats being an invasive species, and I have spoken before and probably will again about how animal rights groups focus far more on us as human beings and what we find cute and cuddly and our personal distress over cute animals being culled. That animal rights is so often far more about our own distress, our own feelings, than it is about protecting ecosystems, than it is about protecting vulnerable species, especially if those species are less cute and cuddly than cats or rabbits or barred owls or whatever the adorable invasive species happens to be. And it's worse than just feral cats preying upon birds and rodents and amphibians. We as human beings tend to dramatically exacerbate the problem by propping up the feral cat population, by feeding outdoor cats, by feeding feral cats. When you put out food for feral cats, you're not actually preventing them from killing songbirds. What you are doing is enabling them to be healthy enough to reproduce so that they can go on killing songbirds and then have a whole bunch of babies who grow up to be cats that kill songbirds. I get into disagreements with friends, especially vegan friends who are big fans of TNR, that's trap, neuter, and release. That is the kind of like animal rights, is like sensitive, protects our feelings so that we don't have to do the hard thing of culling cats. But we have study after study after study that shows us that TNR is just woefully ineffective at controlling cat populations, and especially ineffective, just like an abysmal complete failure at reducing the pressure of cats on songbirds. And other wildlife. I realize that my bias is for songbirds, but it's not just songbirds, it's all kinds of wildlife. To me, when I hear about TNR programs, it feels like the ultimate greenwashing, right? People feel like some good is being done, then they don't have to feel guilty about feeding feral cats or letting their cats roam free outdoors when they should be keeping their cats in the house or in a catio. It helps ease our conscience. It makes us feel better. It centers human beings' feelings above wildlife conservation, above the survival of vulnerable species. Right, so the whole false premise behind TNR is that you capture feral cats, you bring them into the clinic, you pay to have them neutered or spayed. A lot of clinics will just neuter males and they won't bother with females. And then you dump them back out in the habitat where you captured them. The argument here is if you culled that cat instead of neutering it, that you would then create a void where another feral cat would move in. And so by returning the neutered cat, they maintain the territory and what? They don't go on to breed, and then so the myth is that the population will slowly decline over time, but that's not true. The feral cat population is steadily increasing everywhere in the United States, even in states like Florida with pretty active TNR programs. Again, we've known this since at least the late 90s and early 2000s. There was a study that came out in 2001 that was done in Miami-Dade, Florida, that showed that in areas where they did TNR, the feral cat population increased. Another from 2005 in San Diego and Alachua County, Florida, showed that in both of those locations, TNR not only did not reduce population growth, it did not reduce the proportion of pregnant female cats in the population at all. The premise that if you dump a neutered male back into the population, that he's then going to defend his territory is entirely false. What we know is that wild cats, feral cats, tend to form these colonies. They don't have kind of discrete territorial boundaries like you might think. There is not some lone cat that's like keeping all the other cats out. What you get is these colonies of a couple of dozen, up to 6, 7 dozen cats that all are involved and have like a social network and tend to prey on wildlife in the same area. So dumping a neutered male back into that group doesn't prevent other cats from moving in. There was a study done in Italy back in 2006 that found that TNR was insufficient, especially because homeowners are not reliably neutering their cats and then letting their cats outside. So what you find is that non-feral male cats who are intact are compensating and are managing to continue to drive up the population of cats in the area. The second reason is that human beings still dump cats at a very high rate. So even if like magically you reduced the number of viable males in the population, there's still the males that are owned by human beings that allow them outside, and then there is still this population of cats that are being imported into these cat colonies because folks dump cats. I do want to say here that one big red flag for TNR programs is that the biggest proponent of TNR is PETA. They claim that this is the most humane way to deal with overpopulation and homelessness amongst cats. That's pure propaganda, and it's not backed up by the science. We do know that cull programs actually work, whether it's cane toads or rabbits. When you have an active, focused, well-implemented culling program, it actually does make a good difference. It does help protect those vulnerable species that are experiencing excessive predation. And we know that pretty much across the board, our songbird species are all in decline. And that again, habitat loss and cats tied for the top 2 reasons. So culling versus TNR makes sense if you are looking specifically at those species that are being harmed by feral cats, if you're looking at a conservation management strategy. But it also makes sense if you are actually caring about the welfare of cats, if you're actually looking at making humane choices for cats themselves. There have been a couple of studies that have been done in the last few years. I think the most recent one came out in 2019. It's from Key Largo, Florida, where they looked at cats who were being brought in for TNR. They found that they had a high rate of disease. Specifically, a large percentage of them were retrovirus positive. They were often in very, very poor health. Feral cats have an extremely low quality of life. It is a life full of suffering. Let me read from this study here. Return of cats to TNR colonies rather than routine euthanasia of trapped cats increases animal shelter suffering due to non-retroviral disease or trauma. The average age of cats in the study was 82 months when they had to be euthanized. In another study in North Carolina, 75% of the TNR'd kittens in a feral cat colony died within the year. Yet another study shows that fewer than 1% of feral cats live beyond age 7. The feral cat problem is a problem that we have made. 60 million, 100 million cats living a life of suffering, a life of illness, injury, and disease, a short, hard life for a domestic animal that has been turned loose into vulnerable ecosystems where they absolutely wreak havoc and cause tremendous, tremendous damage. TNR is something that protects our feelings. It doesn't protect cats. It doesn't protect songbirds. It doesn't protect the ecosystem. And when we're looking at conservation efforts, we have to think about what is best for the animals, what is best for the ecosystem, not what helps us feel less distressed. We're not looking for the right to comfort here. We're not looking to prioritize our own fragile feelings. That's why I'm a supporter of culling feral cats, from a position of good ecological practice and also because it's the humane thing to do, even if it doesn't feel good in the moment.